What's up, guys? Hope you guys are all doing well. Here's the deal for tonight. Coconut Creek has a 5-10 running at the moment. They have one table going on, and I think it is a public game. I don't think it's a private game, so I'm going to try to hop into that. I played my first 5-10 last night, and I won like 900. I played really well. I didn't feel intimidated, scared at all, so that's good. But in the meantime, I'll probably be running some 2-5, but regardless, let's see how it goes, and I'll see you guys at Seminole Casino Coconut Creek. As I unrack my chip stack, the adrenaline gets to me as I realize this is the biggest game I have ever played to date. There's around $14,000 on the table, and I'm looking to get all of it. The first hand we get involved in is Ace-10 offsuit, and it folds to me on the button. Ace-10 is probably the hand that I've lost the most money with in poker so far, but I'm definitely still going to be opening up the action. I throw out a bet of $35, and the small blind elects that $35 is a good price. And to be honest, when I saw the small blind just call and not raise, my nerves already settled a little bit because I expected a lot of 3-bet and 4-bets pre-flop in this game. But as I figured, the big blind does elect to bump it up to $135. Button versus blinds, this is definitely a spot where the ranges are pretty wide, and I've played with a big blind player numerous times, and he's capable of putting people in tough spots. With that being said, I could flat call, but that would entice the small blind player to tag along as well. I could fold, but no, I'm going to be aggressive. A lot of these players know that I don't play these stakes normally, so I think a 4-bet will get a lot of credit. Unfortunately, this time was not a good time as the big blind rips his whole stack in for $1,700. A massive raise, and once again, this player does put people in tough spots. With that being said, Ace-10 off, I definitely cannot be making this call in any circumstance, but at the same time, I don't want to snap fold and give away too much information. With that being said, though, we're all pretty friendly at the table, and I try to enlighten the mood a little bit by talking to my friend.
I'm just acting like I got a decision to make it look like I'm not fucking. Oh, what should I do? I knew 17. If it was 16.95, I'm snapping. 17, I can't.
Yeah, so as you guys figured, I had to let it go, and I'm already down $400 on the session. Luckily for us, our friend shows Ace-King, and he's going to be winning the first one. I'm ready to fight. I out him for $400 more, and we go on to the next hand. We look down at pocket sevens under the gun, and this is definitely a hand I want to open up the action with. I raised it up to $30, and we actually only see one call from the low jack player. This is the player that I'm want to get involved with most of the night, as I think I might have a slight edge. The flop comes queen 6 deuce with 2 hearts, and action starts off with me. I think this is a board that I can mix between betting and checking pretty 50-50. I leaned a little bit more towards betting, but this time I elected a check. Luckily, he checks it back, so now I'm definitely want to go for value on a clean turn. The turn is pretty miserable for our exact hand. It is a ace of hearts. Yeah, it's good for our range, but I think this player is going to continue with any heart. With that being said, I don't think we need to turn our hand into a bluff. I just check, and luckily he actually goes ahead and checks it back. Praying for a clean river, which is miserable. It is a 4-liner to the flush, and I check it once again. At this point, I'm praying for a check, but he bets out $40. At this point, it is obviously not an unfortunate spot, but at the same time, I'm kind of feeling a little sticky. This player, I don't think he's capable of valuing a middling heart on this board texture, and if he had the king of hearts or jack of hearts, I'd imagine he bet the turn. Sometimes you just have to go with your gut, and this is one of those times. I go ahead and put in the $40, and he tells me good call, which is a great sign as he flips over jack 9 of clubs. So he turned his absolutely nothing into a bluff, and our confidence is actually going up a little bit going into this next hand. In this next hand, we look down at one of my favorite hands to play, a suited wheel. We have ace-3 of clubs in the low jack position, and we actually see a under the gun raise to $35. I want to try to play this hand in position, so I 3-bet to $135, which kind of looks on the larger side, but at the same time, we are all very deep with around 250 big blinds. It folds back around to the under the gun player, which is my friend, and he elects to make the call. So now we get to play this hand in position, heads up, when the flop comes down. Not too good. The flop comes down jack 7-4 with 2 hearts. So we don't have anything on this board by any means, and he goes ahead and checks it over to me. Having a board like this is pretty unfortunate because there's no cards that we can barrel on that would give us more equity. A card like a 5, 6, or 2 will give us a gut shot, but that's about it, and one of those outs might not even be clean with a flush draw on board. So I like to check it back with my ace high and see a turn. The king of diamonds is actually a pretty good turn for a range. It puts another flush draw on board that we do not block, which is unfortunate, but I feel a little confident going for this bluff when my friend goes ahead and checks it over to me. With that being said, once again, I think my ace high may be good, but why not just apply some pressure and try to fold out some smaller pocket pairs or maybe an ace high that is dominating us. So after thinking for a little bit, I definitely want to put in a bet, and I don't think I need to go too big, but I don't want to go too small. I bet around 40% pot with a $110 bet, once again trying to fold out any middling pairs, maybe any non-believing ace high, or maybe any weird gut shot, 2-pair, whatever. After thinking for around 20 seconds, luckily he throws his cards into the mug, and he is a regular in these games, and I go ahead and show him the 3 of clubs to let him know that I'm capable of spicing it up, throwing in some cash. In this next hand, we look down at a pair, which is always good. We see under the gun open to $35, and the player in the cutoff, he thinks that 35 is a fair price and tags along as well. The button's not going anywhere. He makes the call as well, and for 35, I think just a call is fine here. A raise would be a bit ambitious. So we're going 4 ways to a flop, which is pretty good. It comes down 3 deuce 7 with 2 hearts. With only 1 overcard and only 1 combo of 6-7 suited left, I check it, planning on calling a bet of almost any size. The cutoff checks it as well, and now actions on the button, who bets $35. I jokingly beat him in the pot, and I was successful. The turn 9 of clubs is a pretty safe card, and I check it once again. The button says that he hit the 9, and honestly, I'm not having none of it, as he throws out another bet. Pretty sizable, to the tune of $75. For that sizing, definitely not going anywhere. I think raising is a bit ambitious at this point. Sure, we can deny equity from any backdoor flush draw, backdoor straight draw, front door flush draw, but once again, we have enough showdown to just comfortably make this call and call off on most clean rivers. After thinking for a decent while, I think that 75 is a fair price, and once again, I'm planning on just calling off on any clean river. So I throw in the 3 green chips, and we're off to see one more card, which is a jack of spades. The only draw that gets there is 8-10, the front door flush draw bricks, the back door flush draw bricks. More times than not, I think he is going to be 3-bet barreling, and he bluffs here, and this is no exception as he throws out $150. All things considered though, it's really not that big of a bet as he only bets around half pot, and at this point, I just have to risk $150 to win a pot of $500, so I have to be right here around 30% of the time. I tell him I have a pair, and he is undeterred as he stares down the board. I don't think for too long to make the call, and he quickly shows Queen Jack of Hearts, so what looked like a safe river was actually pretty unfortunate as he hits top pair and actually makes a pretty good value bet. A lot of players in the 2-5 and 1-2 would just check there, but he gets the absolute maximum. Things are not going that well so far in the session. Hopefully that can change when we look down at Queen of Spades and Jack of Diamonds. We're in the low jack, and I open up the action to $30. The button calls, and then also the big blind. So we're going 3 ways to a flop, which comes 3-3-4 with 2 spades. We have 2 overs, a backdoor flush draw, and that's really about it. When the big blind checks it over to me, I don't think I'm ahead with queen high all that often. Sure, any overpair is probably going to call, any wheel ace is probably going to call, but once again, we're not winning with queen high. I throw out a bet to the tune of $60. I think I actually like a smaller sizing on this flop a little bit better because any overpair is calling, any flush draw is calling, any 3 is calling, and any 4 is calling regardless. The button gets out of the way, and now the player in the big blind does something that is pretty unexpected. The big blind goes ahead and raises me to $210. Definitely was not expecting this, and truthfully, I should be folding this hand right now around 95% of the time. With that being said though, this player and I, we played together numerous times, and he is capable of putting people in some tough spots. He is a tighter player, and he knows that I know that, so I think he's going to think that I'm going to give him a lot of credit with this raise. With that being said, it's kind of just like we're leveling each other in the spot, so I float, planning on bluffing any good turn, which is a pretty good turn. It is a ace of hearts, so if he was raising any overpair for value now, we can probably comfortably get him off the hand. I expect him to continue betting, and sure enough, he keeps on betting, but it is for a odd sizing as he down bets now to $190. If he had a 3, I'd imagine he'd be sizing up a little bit larger, but for $190, I'm kind of perceiving this as being a blocker type bet with some sort of draw. Sure, ace 3 can play this way, but with that being said, there's only one combo of ace 3 suited left, and I don't think he'd be playing ace 3 off pre-flop. So I think I'm just going to go with this one, with this card being much better for me than it is for him. If he has a 3, he's going to call it off regardless. If he does not have a 3, we're going to put him in a pretty tough spot. So I raise it up to $650, obviously hoping for a fold. If he goes ahead and calls this bet, I'm most likely shutting down on any river. This is something that I definitely need to work on in my game. I do watch a lot of the high stakes live streams, which is a bit inaccurate in these settings as they are playing much deeper. For instance, if he does make this call, I'm only going to have around a 2/3 pot size bet left, which just is not enough fold equity if he does have a hand such as like a 3 or a straight. Unfortunately, he does make the call, so at this point, I'm almost always done with the hand unless there is a perfect river. The 6 of spades, honestly, is not a bad one, but with that being said, only having around 2/3 pot size bet left, and knowing this player is pretty tight, I do not think he's going to be folding to this river all that often. Sure, I could have all the flushes in the spot, but once again, with this specific player type, I think I just got out of line and I'm just going to wave the white flag. I check it, and unfortunately, he does show queen 3 of diamonds. So that hand definitely makes sense, and I'm pretty confident he wouldn't have folded to a river jam. So I think I saved myself a little bit of money, but I definitely just should have folded when the time was right. Hopefully, we can get something going when we look down at pocket queens on the button. I go ahead and limp. Yes, you did hear that correctly. I put in $10, but for one sole reason. The small blind player didn't see my cards, and he actually acts out of position and raises to $40. With that being said, the $40 raise does stand, and the big blind looks like he's trying to capitalize on the situation and 3-bets to $135. Now, this is the same exact player that I got involved in with the first hand of the night when I had ace-10, so I 3-bet to $325. Yeah, it's a little bit on the smaller size, but I do this on purpose because I have around $875 behind, and from his perspective, that is enough fold equity to try to run a bluff, and my image against him is pretty loose. The player in the small blind gets out of the way as I figured he would. Now action is on the big blind. To my surprise, the big blind goes ahead and rips it all in for $875 more. I don't think for around 2 seconds, and I quickly go ahead and make the call. Hoping that we're not up against aces or kings. Cards are not exposed at the moment, so I'm unaware of what he has, but we do agree to just run it one time, so all the money is going to one person. With $2,260 in the middle, let's hope for a clean board. The board comes out ace high, and he quickly tables ace queen of diamonds. He turns the flush draw, and we're drawing to 1 out, but we do not get there as he goes ahead and gets trips on the river and takes our remaining stack. I'm not done fighting. I buy in for $2,500 more dollars, which means we are in the game for $5,400. Hoping to get some of these chips back when we look down at ace jack offsuit. There's a button straddle, and I am actually the player on the button, so the action is now 25, which means that stack sizes are drastically diminished in terms of big blinds. That being said, it folds around to the cutoff player, and he raises up the action to $80. Cutoff versus button in a straddle pot. When it folds around to the cutoff, the ranges are just insanely wide. Ace-Jack is way too strong to just be flatting here, even though we are in position, so I raise it up to a total that accumulates to $240. Now, the player in the cutoff, he is my friend and he is a thinking player, but I am happy to take a flop in position up against him with what I am almost certain is the best hand. To be honest, I don't really care what he does. This time, he thinks that a call is the best play, so we're off to see a flop in position. The board gives us a gut shot on 10-9-7 with 2 spades. He goes ahead and checks the action over to me, and this board is just going to connect with him so frequently, and it'll be pretty miserable to fold away our equity if I get check raise. Our ace high could have enough showdown by itself, so that being said, I like that a check back is probably the best play on this board texture, and I'm off to see a turn. So we're off to see a turn, which is the best card in the deck, an offsuit 8. So we're over here sitting with the second nuts, and we love that the cutoff player decides that he wants to put some more money in this pot. The cutoff elects to lead out for a total of $160. Action's now on me, and I think if I flat here, it is pretty apparent of what I have, almost always consisting of some sort of straight or flush draw. But I think if I raise, this will actually kind of be like a leveling war, like who has more jacks in the range. With that being said, having an actual jack in our hand obviously helps because we have these second nuts. So I think that raising on this texture is fine now. So I bump it up to a sizing that isn't too big because I think he's going to continue with a lot of hands just simply because I don't think he's going to believe me. I raise it up to $350, which is basically a min raise. He doesn't think for too long, literally for around 10 seconds, and quickly goes ahead and makes the call. With his fast acting, I can almost always put him on some sort of draw. I think if he had a jack, he would just go with it out of position on such a wet and dynamic board. So that being said, let's hope for a clean river, which is probably the grossest one in the deck. It is another 8. Now, any sets beat us, any flush draw we still beat, and any jack we are now chopping with. That being said though, he thinks that this card is a great one, as he does something that I hated to hear. He rips it in for $780. Such a disgusting spot, as I think oftentimes he could have 2 pair that improve to a full house, or he could have a busted flush draw. It's annoying too, because if he has a jack, I'm basically calling off $780 to potentially chop, and basically the only hands that we are beating is a busted flush draw themselves. After thinking for a long time, this is a really close decision, as I don't think that he has too many bluffs in the spot, but I go well into the tank. After raising the flop, I don't think I would play any of my sets this way, and I think he knows that as well. But at the same time, leading the flop on his perspective, I don't think he has many sets. In the moment though, I just could not piece it together, and I show him the ace jack, and I reluctantly let it go. Unfortunately for me, he does flash a king of spades, which is disgusting. Sure, he could have had king jack of spades, but I think more times than not, he had a busted flush draw and totally got the best of us on that one. One thing that I have noticed is that the spots people put you in these games are much tougher, and you definitely have to be thinking a little bit harder. At this point, we are stuck heaps. Definitely the most I've been in a game for, and definitely the most I've ever been stuck, but I'm playing it cool, and I still feel confident in myself. This next hand, we look down at 3-4 of spades, and we are in the cutoff. The under the gun raises to $35, and the hijack calls. I like to just overcall. I don't think raising in the spot accomplishes too much, because this hand can flop well multi-way. The big blind calls as well, and we're going 4 ways to a flop, which is a dream. The flop comes down queen, 8, ace, all spades. So we go ahead and flop a baby flush. Hopefully this is the hand that we can reclaim some of our chips with. So when action checks over to me, I definitely want to be putting in a bet. I make a mistake on my sizing. I threw out $70 into a pot that was around $140. Around 50% is just a little bit too cheap for any higher spade to continue. And if a player has an ace, they most likely are going to be continuing with a larger sizing as well. To my surprise though, the under the gun player check raises me to $175. What the heck is going on? He just sat down, so he has around $1,000 behind before this bet, and now he has around $800. I just flat call because I don't think a worse hand can call a jam. I think he would fold out any draws, and if he barrels on the turn on any clean card, I'm just going to check raise him all in. So that's what I do. I like to just make the call, and we're off to see a turn. The turn is a miserable 10 of spades, so now we have nothing but a baby flush. To my surprise though, he now goes ahead and checks it over to me. I'm not too sure how to perceive this. Maybe he just picked up some showdown, but I like to check it back. The jack of hearts doesn't really change much of anything, and once again, he goes ahead and checks it over to me. So I think we can almost always eliminate him from having a higher spade, but at this point, what can I really target with my 4 high spade? Once again, it's just an annoying spot, but I don't think I need to turn my hand into a bluff. I go ahead and check it back, and unfortunately for me, he shows pocket 8s. So we are going to win this pot, but knowing his exact holding, I think we could have gotten stacks in on the flop. Just a bit unfortunate that was his exact holding, but once again, happy to take it down. And slowly crawling out of this hole. This next hand is a bit of a weird one. We go ahead and look down at king 10 of diamonds, 40% of a royal flush. I'm not folding. I open up the action to $30, and we only see one call from the player in the big blind. The flop brings us no help. It comes out queen 8, 8, and the big blind goes ahead and checks it over to me. I think with king high, we have enough showdown to check, but I want to mix in a bet every once in a while. I threw out $25, and he thinks for around 10 seconds or so and goes ahead and puts in a raise. The big blind player throws out a raise to $85. Oh boy. So, most people will just open fold, right? Well, we are not like most people. We are going to break this down and see what he's repping. He never would be doing this with an 8 with the player type. I don't think he would ever be doing this with a queen. So that being said, I think he has a whole bunch of nothing. Yes, I guess he could once in a while be doing this with trips, whatever. But I'm just pretty convinced he has a whole bunch of nothing and just is trying to take this pot down, as simple as it sounds. The only weird part is if I re-raise, from his perspective, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense because I wouldn't be doing this with an 8, but he snap folds and we don't have to worry about it. I show the bluff to let him know that I am not to be messed with and I'm coming for some more of his chips. In the last hand of the night, we look down at Queen Jack of Diamonds. Once again, 40% of a royal flush, and in the under the gun position, I'll open up the action to $30. Unfortunately for us though, this time we do not go heads up to a flop, as the low jack, the small blind, and the big blind, they all tag along. So we're off to see a flop 4 ways, which doesn't bring us any help. 10-6-4 with 1 diamond is a board that I do not want to be barreling on with 3 other opponents in the pot. We have a lot of good backdoors that we can barrel on if we do pick them up and action checks around. So when I check it and action checks around, that is the most ideal outcome. The King of Hearts is one of the better cards in the deck to be barreling on, as it is good for my perceived range, and now we are open-ended. The small blind player who I got involved in last hand bets out $100. The big blind insta-folds and action's now on me. I think this is a spot that I could just flat call and realize some equity, as he is around, I would say, $650 to $700 behind. With this logic, I should probably just be flat calling, because if I raise and I get re-raised, with the precedent being laid, I'm almost just always going to have to call it off. But I think that he doesn't have much of anything on his board texture, so I throw out $275, trying to get him to fold any draw. Unfortunately for him, I have been kind of active to him, and he says I raise him on every hand, and I reply by saying that we need some action. Unfortunately, I would have preferred to fold, but he does make the call, and we're hoping to improve on a river. An ace or 9 would be ideal, but a jack of hearts, I guess, is okay now that we have some showdown. He checks it over to me, and it's a bit of an annoying spot, as we're probably just going to have to check this one behind, losing a decent percentage of the time.
I'm probably behind.
He says he doesn't have anything, and I showed the jack and we are good. Very surprised on what he called a raise with, but nonetheless, I guess I'm happy to take it down with a very odd, unorthodox play. This is going to be the last hand of the night. Unfortunately, we do not book a profit, but I'm more than happy to claw back a lot of the losses that were taken earlier. And more importantly, I'm also really happy with my confidence and basically the way I played in this session, even though every hand was not played optimally.
All right, guys. It's pretty late. It's like 4:30, but anyways, we just got out of there and we played the biggest game I've ever played by far. Game wasn't that good, to be honest with you guys. A lot of people in there were the best players at Coconut Creek, but truthfully, I felt like I held my own. Felt like I did fine. The result would have been different if we would have won that queens versus ace queen all in pre for around 140 bigs. It was button versus big blind, but he spikes 2 aces and we can't take that one down. But luckily the money went to a good guy, so don't mind that one. But anyways, if we win that all in, that we are a pretty substantial favorite, we book a profit. Like, simple as that. So anyways, I punted a little bit on that one hand with the queen jack, just a straight up punt, like no other words to describe it. So that hand, and then I made some good call downs. I played well, I feel like. So I really can't be that mad. And I won 1,000 last night in the 2-5. So what are you gonna do? So we were in the game for $5,500, which is crazy to say because we literally were playing 1-2 6 months ago, buying it for 200. And yeah, we were at the game for $3,983. So we basically lost $1,500. And once again, it all comes down to that queens versus ace queen flip. Not flip, we were way ahead. But yeah, that's what it comes down to. We win that, we book a profit. Anyways, guys, hope you guys appreciated this video. I sure had a lot of fun playing these stakes. I'm definitely going to be playing more in the future. I felt great playing them. Honestly, I did not feel intimidated one bit. As you guys could see, I literally punted way too much. So anyways, guys, hope you guys appreciate it. Peace.